My name is Olivia. I'm 42. And my own sister, a bank manager, publicly humiliated me for trying to withdraw $150. Before I tell you how I responded by initiating a $4.2 billion asset transfer that froze their entire system and got her fired on the spot, understand why I didn't scream or make a scene in that bank. You have to understand my family. For them, I was always less, the quiet one, the one who brought handmade birthday cards instead of expensive gifts. I still remember my 10th birthday. I'd spent a month painting a picture of a lighthouse for my parents, my little hands smudged with blue and gray paint. I was so proud. I handed it to them, my heart pounding. My father, Richard, glanced at it for a second before turning to my sisters. Now, Vanessa, Cassandra, what did you two get us? They'd pooled their allowance to buy some crystal vase. My mother, Helen, clapped her hands in delight. My painting was set aside on a side table, forgotten. That was the moment I learned my place. I wasn't the smart one or the pretty one or the successful one. Vanessa was the golden child in the professional world, climbing the corporate ladder with ruthless ambition. Cassandra was the social butterfly, charming and manipulative, always the center of attention. I was just Olivia, the placeholder, the family's quiet, convenient afterthought. This dynamic didn't change as we grew up. It solidified like concrete setting around my feet. Years later, at a family dinner, I tried to share some good news. I'd been volunteering at a local community garden, and we'd just secured a small grant to build a children's section. I was so excited. I opened my mouth to speak, but Vanessa cut me off, laughing as she announced her latest promotion. Conversation immediately shifted to her new title, her new bonus. My father beamed. My mother asked what kind of car she was going to buy. I just sat there, my small victory dissolving into silence. Felt like I was invisible. The only person who ever truly saw me was my grandfather. He was a quiet man like me, but his eyes missed nothing. Before he passed, he left me a small, worn wooden box. Inside was an old-fashioned key and a note written in his elegant script. For the youngest, because she has the biggest heart. They use it when they forget who you are. He also made me the executor of a small family trust fund, something meant to be a safety net for all of us. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was his legacy. Lately, I'd noticed some things in the statements that didn't sit right. Small, odd withdrawals made by Cassandra. I'd made a mental note to look into it, a small knot of unease forming in my stomach, but I'd pushed it aside. You always want to believe the best of your family, right? Even when they've given you every reason not to. The one good thing that came out of being invisible to my family was that it forced me to build a life entirely on my own terms, far away from their judgment. I had my small, clean apartment. I had my books, and I had Mrs. Gable. She lived 2 doors down, an 80-year-old widow with a laugh that could fill a room and eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. She was more of a mother to me than my own had ever been. She called me just to share a recipe or to tell me a funny story about her late husband. She saw me. That cold Tuesday morning, Mrs. Gable had called, her voice thin and worried. Her heating was on the fritz, and the repairman wanted $150 in cash up front. She was on a fixed income and was short. "Don't you worry about a thing," I told her, my voice full of a confidence I didn't feel. "I'll go to the bank and get it for you right now." Which brought me here, standing in the cold, sterile lobby of Crescent Bank, waiting in line like everyone else. And standing behind the manager's desk, watching me with a smug little smile, was my sister, Vanessa. When it was my turn, I walked up to the teller. Before I could even speak, Vanessa glided over, her heels clicking on the polished floor. Well, look what the cat dragged in," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "What can we do for you, Olivia?" I kept my voice low. "I just need to withdraw $150. She let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a performance, and the entire bank was her audience. $150? Is that all?" She leaned in, her voice dropping to a stage whisper that everyone could hear. "We don't really serve beggars here. Are you sure you even have that much in your account? The air was sucked out of my lungs. A hot flush crawled up my neck. I could feel the eyes of the other customers on me, a mix of pity and morbid curiosity. Teller looked deeply uncomfortable. For a moment, I saw the 10-year-old me again, holding her forgotten painting. I saw the young woman at the dinner table, her voice silenced, and I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet. It was a profound, bone-deep weariness. I was so tired of this. I looked my sister in the eye. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked out of the bank, the door hissing shut behind me. That moment, I thought that was the worst of it. The humiliation, the shame. I was so wrong. The worst wasn't what she had done. It was what I was about to do. That night, my apartment felt smaller than usual. The silence was deafening. I made myself a cup of tea, my hands shaking slightly. I sat on my worn sofa, the one I'd bought from a thrift store, and I opened my laptop. It wasn't a fancy machine, but it was secure. Highly secure. With a few keystrokes, I bypassed the simple user interface of my life and logged into my real one. The screen flickered, and a clean, minimalist dashboard appeared. The top, in stark white letters against a black background, was a name, Shell Code 7. And beneath it a number, $4,210,350,000. This was my secret. This was the life I had built in the shadows while my family was busy sneering at my secondhand clothes and my quiet existence. After a particularly nasty fight years ago where my father told me I'd never amount to anything, I had walked away. I took the small inheritance my grandfather had left me personally, the one outside the family trust, and I poured all my grief, all my intelligence, all my quiet focus into the one thing I understood: patterns, financial markets. I created a predictive algorithm, a piece of code so elegant and powerful it felt like poetry. I called it M-Dove, after the mourning doves that used to coo outside my window. M-Dove wasn't a person. It was an entity, a ghost in the machine, and I was its architect. Shell Code 7 was the investment fund built on that ghost, and it had grown into a silent giant. No one knew I was behind it. To the world, I was just Olivia, a woman living a simple life in Cincinnati. I let out a bitter laugh that echoed in the quiet room. The irony was suffocating. My own sister, who had just publicly shamed me for $150, was a mid-level manager at a bank, probably making a decent salary she bragged about constantly. And I could buy her bank 10 times over and not even notice. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was just surviving. But as I sat there staring at the screen, I decided to run a quarterly review of my fund's new strategic partnerships. It was just a routine check. My main investments were handled by a massive, top-tier global bank. I was scrolling through a list of their recent acquisitions, smaller companies they'd absorbed to expand their retail services. And then I saw it, a name that made my blood run cold. Crescent Bank, my sister's bank, the bank where she was a powerful manager. Through a chain of corporate acquisitions, her employer was now effectively a subsidiary serving my fund. Vanessa worked for me. She just didn't know it. A switch flipped in my head. It wasn't about the $150 anymore. It wasn't about the years of insults. It was about the system. The system they worshipped, the one built on money and status and titles, was the very system that now gave me all the power. And I realized this wasn't just an opportunity. It was a responsibility. A responsibility to use the power my grandfather knew I had. I spent the rest of the night not in anger, but in cold, calculated focus. This wouldn't be a messy, emotional outburst. It would be a surgical strike. 3 a.m. I picked up a secure phone and made a call to my top legal counsel. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady. "I need you to arrange an emergency risk assessment meeting for tomorrow morning with the regional director of Crescent Bank's parent company. The representative from Shell Code 7 will be M-Dove." "Yes, I'll be attending personally." I hung up. The storm was no longer coming. It had arrived. The next morning, I didn't dress like a billionaire. I chose a simple, well-tailored navy blue dress. No flashy jewelry, no designer handbag. My power wasn't in what I wore. It was in what I knew. As I stood in front of the mirror, I had a flicker of doubt. A voice that sounded suspiciously like my mother's whispered in my ear. "Is this necessary, Olivia? Why cause such a fuss?" Who was this person staring back at me? This woman who was about to bring a world of trouble down on her own sister. For a second, I felt a wave of nausea. Was this making me like them? Cruel, vindictive? I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I walked over to the old wooden box and took out my grandfather's note. The paper was soft and worn at the creases. "For the youngest, because she has the biggest heart. They use it when they forget who you are." My heart. He didn't say to use my anger or my wealth or my intelligence. He said to use my heart. And my heart knew that true strength wasn't about letting people walk all over you. It was about having boundaries. It was about demanding respect. Not as a billionaire, but as a human being. This wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of self-preservation. My resolve hardened, not into anger, but into a calm, clear purpose. I put the note in my purse, a secret piece of armor, and walked out the door. When I walked into Crescent Bank for the second time in 24 hours, the atmosphere was completely different. A nervous-looking man in an expensive suit was waiting by the door. This was Mr. Chin, the regional director. He'd flown in from Chicago this morning. He rushed forward as I entered, his hand outstretched. "Miss Dove, an absolute honor. I'm Marcus Chin. Thank you so much for coming." His eyes darted around nervously. Vanessa was standing near her glass-walled office, a confused look on her face. She saw me, and her expression curdled into a sneer. She started to walk over, probably to throw me out again, but then she saw Mr. Chin fawning over me, his face pale with anxiety. The sneer on her face froze, replaced by a look of utter bewilderment. "Please, this way, Miss Dove," Mr. Chin said, gesturing toward Vanessa's office. We walked into the office, the very same room from which she ruled her little kingdom. I sat down in the visitor's chair. Mr. Chin remained standing, wringing his hands. Vanessa hovered in the doorway, her arms crossed, trying to project authority she no longer had. "So," I began, my voice quiet but carrying in the tense silence. "Shell Code 7 has some concerns." Mr. Chin swallowed hard. "Of course, Miss Dove. Anything. How can we help?" "It's not about how you can help," I said, looking from his terrified face to my sister's confused one. "It's about a decision we've already made. Due to, let's call them, serious concerns about the professional culture and management competency at this branch, Shell Code 7 is initiating a hostile asset transfer." Mr. Chin looked like he was going to be sick. Vanessa just looked clueless. "A what?" she asked. I turned my full attention to her for the first time. "It's a banking term, Vanessa. Let me simplify it for you. It means my fund is publicly declaring that your bank's parent company is too incompetent and too risky to manage our money. We are pulling all of our assets. We're taking all $4.2 billion and we're moving it to a competitor. And per the terms of our agreement, we are required to state exactly why. The reason will be loss of confidence in personnel, specifically personnel at this branch." The color drained from Mr. Chin's face, but it was Vanessa I was watching. The gears were turning in her head, slowly, painfully. The name M. Dove, the impossible sum of money, me, her worthless sister, sitting in this chair. It all crashed together in her mind at once. Her jaw went slack. Her eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated horror. "You," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It's you." I gave her a small, sad smile. "Me? I just came in yesterday to withdraw $150, remember?" And that's when she broke. The arrogant bank manager, the golden child, my tormentor, crumpled. Her knees literally buckled, and she dropped to the floor in a heap. It wasn't elegant. It was a complete and total collapse. "No, no, no," she sobbed, actual tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. She started to crawl toward me on her hands and knees. Olivia, please. Please don't do this. You can't. You'll ruin me. You'll ruin the family's reputation. What will Mom and Dad say? Her pleas weren't for forgiveness. They were about saving herself, about her image, about what our parents would think. Even now, in her utter desperation, it was all about her. I didn't even have to say a word. Mr. Chin, his face a mask of cold fury, pointed a trembling finger at the heap on the floor that was my sister. You did this. You brought this disaster on us. Get out. Get out of my sight. You are fired. Security. As two guards came in and gently but firmly lifted a hysterical Vanessa to her feet, I stood up. I looked at my sister, her face blotchy and ravaged by tears, and I said quietly, so only she could hear, "This was never about the money, Vanessa. It was about respect, something you never learned how to give." Then I turned to the petrified Mr. Chin. The asset transfer stands. I walked out of the bank, the door hissing shut behind me, leaving the wreckage of my sister's life in my wake. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt quiet. The first tremor of a coming earthquake had just hit, and I knew the main shock was still to come. As I drove away, my phone started to buzz, and it didn't stop. A text from Cassandra. "OMD, Liv. I heard something crazy happened with Vanessa. Are you okay? We should talk." A missed call from Gregory, Cassandra's sycophantic husband. Then another text, this time from my mother. "Olivia, please call me. We are all very worried." Worried. They weren't worried when Vanessa was grinding me into the dirt. They were worried now that the power dynamic had shifted. The sickeningly sweet tone, the sudden concern, it was so transparent it was almost laughable. I let the phone buzz, ignoring them all. I needed a moment to breathe, but they were relentless. Finally, as I pulled into my driveway, the phone rang again. The screen read Mom. I don't know why, but I answered it. Maybe some small part of me hoped for a different reaction. "Olivia, oh thank God," her voice was a torrent of panicked words. "What have you done? Vanessa is a mess. Her career is over. How could you be so cruel, so vindictive? After all we've done for you, you do this to your own sister. You have to fix this. Think of the family. Think of the family." "Not Olivia, are you okay?" "Not, I can't believe she treated you like that." "Not, I'm so sorry we let this happen. Just think of the family's reputation." The last bit of hope in me withered and died. The last thread of obligation snapped. My voice, when I spoke, was colder than I'd ever heard it. "You're right," I said. "We need to talk about the family. All of us, one last time." "Yes, yes," she said, relieved. "We'll come over. We'll sort this out." "Sunday," I said, cutting her off. "Dinner at my place. I'll text you the address." I hung up before she could reply. This couldn't be 1,000 small cuts. It had to be one clean break, a final reckoning. Sunday evening they arrived. My father, my mother, Cassandra, and Gregory. They pulled up to the address I'd sent, and I watched from the window as they stared, dumbfounded. It wasn't my small, anonymous apartment building. It was a house, a beautiful modern home nestled in a quiet, wooded neighborhood, tasteful, elegant, and clearly very, very expensive. Their faces were a mixture of shock and naked greed. I opened the door before they could ring the bell. "Welcome," I said. They walked in, gaping at the high ceilings and the art on the walls. The family dinner I'd prepared wasn't fancy, but it was laid out on a long dining table. They sat down, an awkward silence hanging in the air. My father was the first to speak, his voice gruff. "All right, Olivia, what is all this? You've made your point. You're rich. Now you need to fix the mess you made with your sister." Cassandra chimed in, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "He's right, Liv. We're family. Vanessa made a mistake, but destroying her life over it, it's just not right. We have to support each other. They spent the next 10 minutes lecturing me. They blamed me for being cruel, for being secretive, for embarrassing them. My mother just sat there, wringing her hands, nodding along. Not once did they acknowledge what Vanessa had done. Not once did they ask how I felt. I let them finish. I let all the poison fill the room. Then, when they were done, I calmly stood up and walked to a side table. I picked up a thin, leather-bound file and placed it in the center of the dining table. If everyone is finished talking about how I've ruined a life, I said, my voice dangerously quiet, perhaps we can talk about how Cassandra has been ruining a legacy. Cassandra's face went pale. What are you talking about? I opened the file. I'm talking about the family trust, the one grandfather set up for all of us, the one he trusted me to look after. I slid a bank statement across the table to my father. You see that withdrawal? And this one? And this one? I then slid over another document. And here are the forged invoices Cassandra submitted from a shell company she created to justify those withdrawals. For 2 years, she's been stealing from us. From you, from me, from the memory of the one man in this family who valued integrity. The silence was absolute. Gregory looked at his wife with horror. My father's face was ashen as he looked at the proof. My mother looked at Cassandra, her mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. They were finally forced to see that their other golden child wasn't just selfish. She was a common thief. I looked at their shattered faces. You want to talk about family? I asked, my voice breaking with the pain of a lifetime. A family doesn't do this to each other. A family doesn't measure love in dollars and promotions. A family shows up. You were never a family to me. You were just shareholders in my misery. I took a deep breath. This isn't a family anymore. It's a failed business. And I'm liquidating my shares. I looked each of them in the eye. This is goodbye. A few months have passed. The noise has faded. Cassandra's company fired her after an internal audit, and she's facing legal trouble. Vanessa is working some low-level admin job across town. I hear about it sometimes, but it feels like a story about someone else. I'm standing in a patch of bright sunlight. The air smells like fresh dirt and lavender. I'm not in a boardroom or a fancy house. I'm at the new community garden wing of the local library, a project I funded. It's named the Gable and Grandfather Reading Garden. Mrs. Gable is here, sitting on a bench, reading to a group of children. She catches my eye and gives me that warm, crinkling smile. My real family. I bend down and pick up a small seedling. As I place it in the soft earth, I finally understand. The most important transaction of my life wasn't the $4.2 billion asset transfer. It was the withdrawal of my love, my loyalty, and my energy from a toxic account that had been bankrupt for years. That account is now permanently closed. As my fingers press the soil around the new plant, I feel a sense of peace I've never known. I'm not the invisible daughter or the worthless sister anymore. I'm just Olivia. And for the first time in my life, that feels like more than enough. I'm finally planting a garden of my own.